Welcome everyone to Mailfuzz Movies. This is the weekly news show, and coming up today we've got an Aunt Gladys prequel for Weapons, the return of Sleepaway Camp, and Martin Scorsese's next project. Amongst other things, there's a lot of little news stories this week in the horror, sci-fi, and beyond world. So we'll get into things pretty quickly. I won't dilly-dally. We'll get into it. First up, we have the Aunt Gladys prequel for Weapons. This is something that was kind of floated around a few weeks ago, maybe a couple months ago at this point. But Zach Cregger has confirmed that it's something that he's developing. It's something that he's excited about, and he's floating around. There's a story to tell, right? And there was some cut material from the movie Weapons that is going to be expanded upon, I suppose, into a full movie. The quote here is that I was ready, I kind of had it in my pocket before the movie came out. Which, sure, if he's got an idea, then fair enough. I have to admit, on a personal note, I'm not particularly all that excited by this. I mean, I loved Weapons, I thought it was a great movie, and Cregger has certainly earned some goodwill and trust because he's now put out two good horror movies specifically. So I suspect it would probably be solid at the very least. But I have to admit, I don't tend to really like prequels as an idea, and I don't necessarily feel like anything in Weapons needs to be explained. I don't need to have the backstory explained in any way. I'm kind of okay with it being a mystery with some mystique. You know, I don't need anything to be expanded upon, really. But if they're going to do it, then we'll see how it turns out, I guess. But admittedly, up until now, he's been doing these original things and been doing something new each time. Resident Evil, of course, he's doing next isn't a new IP, but it's at least, it's a new thing for him. It's a completely different entity from what he's worked on before. Whereas Aunt Gladys, if this goes through, and that might not be the name of it, of course, it could be called anything, it would be the first time he's double dipped into the same kind of world. So, I mean, we'll see if it actually takes off and goes places. Given that Weapons actually was very successful and made a lot of money for Warner Brothers, it seems quite likely that something will come of this. Who knows, though? Maybe this is one that he'll write but not direct or something. Maybe he'll pass this on so he can go off and make something else. But regardless, it's there, it exists, and he's excited about doing it. So, I mean, at least if he's enthusiastic, at least we should be open to the idea. It'd be one thing if he was like being dragged in or he was just convinced by a truck of money. That'd be something else. But if he's creatively excited, then maybe there's something to, something to look forward to there, even if the idea doesn't, get my juices flowing the way that I would like. Next up, Martin Scorsese is going to direct What Happens at Night. This is an adaptation of Peter Cameron's 2020 horror mystery novel. This is from Deadline. Most of these are from Deadline. A couple of them are bloody disgusting for some of the more genre-specific stuff. Leonardo DiCaprio and Jennifer Lawrence are going to star in the film, so it's got a big, pair of stars in it, as well as Scorsese behind the director's chair. We have writer Patrick Marber, who worked on Closer and Notes on a Scandal. Apple Original Films are the ones sort of developing this along with Studio Canal, and they're looking at starting shooting in January 2026. Scorsese had been announced to produce this a while ago, but is now committed to direct the film. It's drawing comparisons, all from Deadline, this wording that I'm saying here. So, but it's worth saying this because it's given us a sense of what it might be. Drawing comparisons to The Shining and Twin Peaks, What Happens at Night is a dreamlike story of a married American couple who travel to a small, snowy European town to adopt a baby. They check in to the cavernous, largely deserted hotel where they encounter an enigmatic cast of characters, including a flamboyant chanteuse. It's a French word. I think it means singer, but I don't know how to pronounce it. A depraved businessman and a charismatic faith healer. Nothing is quite as it seems in this strange frozen world as the couple struggle to claim their baby, the less they seem to know about themselves and the life they've built together. So, I mean, the comparisons to The Shining and Twin Peaks definitely raised my eyebrow a little bit in terms of interest. But despite all the talent here, despite the comparisons and the snowy setting, it being a horror movie, which is not something that Scorsese's done too much with in the past, I do get a little bit worried. in some ways because probably one of the more genre-esque things that he's done, specifically with Leonardo DiCaprio, was Shutter Island. Now I realize that some people do really like that movie. I hated that movie. I thought that movie was tedious to get through. So if it's going to be like that, especially it's that dreamlike part that worries me the most. When they say dreamlike, I'm a little bit worried about Scorsese doing dreamlike because in the past I've not gelled with the way he's handled that type of stuff. Scorsese's a great director, but he's a director who I've been very up and down with, where there's like some movies he's made I think are masterpieces, and he's got everything in between for me, all the way down to I hated that, I never want to watch that again. So it's really tough for me to say how excited I am for this, because there's just enough of a history with the director that I'm not like sure I'm going to like this. But certainly there's a lot of elements here that could become something great. It's just hard for me to know for sure because I have that history with these films, especially when he goes a bit more genre-esque. When he goes into like more thriller or twisty-turny type movies like Shutter Island, I tend not to be as into them. Then again, I loved Hugo, which was also very creative and genre-esque in its own way, but in a much more light-hearted sense. So anyway, that's the night. What was the title of that movie? Let me scroll back up. It was a long article. What Happens at Night was the title of that. So that's what Scorsese's working on with Leonardo DiCaprio and Jennifer Lawrence. Next up, this is a non-news story, but maybe there's something to read into here anyway. And what I mean by that is that Entertainment Weekly had reported just a couple of days ago that Hayden Panettiere was going to return for Scream VII. So she played Kirby in Scream 4 and then returned as an FBI agent in Scream 6. And it was reported just a couple days ago that she would be back. They even said she's teaming up with Neve Campbell to, take on the Ghostface killer, blah, 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 blah. However, just today, earlier today, they put out like an update or a retraction and said, sorry, Hayden Panettiere's involvement has not been confirmed. Which is really weird, because they said it as if it was ironclad and then said it's not been confirmed. But notice they did not say that she is not in the movie. They did not retract what they said in terms of like, oh, everything we said was wrong or false. They just said it wasn't confirmed, which I wonder if... It makes me wonder that she maybe is in the movie, but they didn't want to announce it yet, and like they kind of jumped the gun a little bit or something and like said something they weren't supposed to. So now they're trying to frame it as, oh, we're speculating, or we're we've got like a rumor or something. We don't know for sure, but maybe they do know for sure. I don't know. That's immediately what my mind went to when they put out the very vague like retraction of this, which was just, oh, it's not been confirmed, even though it seemed to be before. So yeah, I don't know what that means. Maybe she's not in it, and if she isn't in it, then who knows what the hell the article in the first place was getting at and where the information came from. But regardless, Scream 7's coming out February next year. Take from this what you will. Read into this with your own thoughts, because honestly, who knows? Okay, probably the weirdest story next, which is another horror movie story. And it's a reboot of an old franchise, that franchise being Sleepaway Camp. The reason why it's weird is because it's being produced... So the headline read as Sleepaway Camp Reboot produced by Kenan Thompson. And that Kenan Thompson, for those of a certain age of us, is Kenan from Kenan and Kel. So to me, that just feels like two very different random things put into a blender, and this is the two words that spat out. Like, the name Kenan Thompson and the horror franchise Sleepaway Camp. Like, nothing in my mind would have connected those two things before this article, this news story. So anyway, he's got a production company. Apparently the whole thing with his company is like artists first, that kind of thing. Because the other part of this, which is kind of interesting, is that the people behind the new movie are the people who were behind the original movie. Robert Hiltzik, who wrote and directed the original Sleepaway Camp, is going to direct it from his own script. So the director of the original film is writing and directing this reboot, which is kind of nuts. So development's underway right now. Plot details have been kept secret, but the producers are promising we're staying true to the OG story, while Robert is adding some insane new twists. Now, I don't want to get into spoilers here for the original, but Sleepaway Camp 1's got a pretty infamous ending, which admittedly, I'm not sure like how much of that you get away with in 2025 or beyond whenever this comes out. So I suspect things are going to be changed up a little bit, although I imagine there'll be references to what that original ending was. I mean, it's kind of a weird thing for me because I mean, I enjoy Sleepaway Camp, and I especially enjoy Sleepaway Camp 2, which was more of a kind of tongue-in-cheek meta horror movie. Long before Scream existed, Sleepaway Camp 2 was kind of the king of that type of horror movie. As far as like more Sleepaway Camp goes, though, I don't even know what I want from it, because I guess that people think of the twist as being the defining thing, and it is the most memorable thing about the original movie, but maybe it's because I like 2 more, where it's a bit more tongue-in-cheek, but I do wonder, like, I assume they're going to see the ending and the reactions to the original ending as the thing they have to capture in some way, even if they're doing it in a different manner, even if they're changing what the twist is going to be. They're going to have multiple twists, they're going to circumvent the expectations of everyone who knows what it is. To be honest, like, if they give me just a decent slasher movie, I think I'm okay with that. Like, I don't know if I need them to swing for the fences on shock value stuff. Right, just a decent slasher movie set at a summer camp, and I realize there's been tons of those, and I realize that that's also kind of what I want from Friday the 13th. So maybe it's important for Sleepaway Camp to differentiate itself and do something crazy and weird or different just to be different, because there's value in that, and I get that. Like, I understand that. But at the same time, like, them chasing shock value, which is not exactly what they said here, but like, you know, I feel like because of the original's ending, that's probably what they want to do. But anyway, yeah, apparently Hiltzik and his wife have been approached for the rights to the franchise, which they owned for a number of years, but they kept holding out and didn't sell it off because they wanted to be involved in whatever potential reboot or, you know, project that was going to come from it was going to be. And almost no one's going to say, yeah, you can make the new movie when we buy the rights from you. So apparently, Thompson and Ryan Jr., his producing partner, their AFA is a place that emphasizes on keeping creative control and ownership with the artist. And that's kind of maybe why this company's appeal to this director and his wife here, is that they get to keep control of it in a way that no one else was going to let them. Which is interesting. I mean, I don't know how much I don't know if I've seen anything else from that director other than Sleepaway Camp, so I don't know if I feel strongly about his work necessarily, but if nothing else, it'll be curious to see what this ends up being. You know, I don't know if it's going to be good. In fact, I'd almost place money on it being not good, but maybe it'll be interesting bad, or maybe it'll be a surprising gem. I don't know. It's a weird story though, so take from that what you will. Next up, Renny Harlin is apparently going back to the Sharks. So he's apparently already finished making all 3 Strangers chapters that he's been doing, because I think they shot them all back to back or something. So he's already got another movie gearing up for release next year. So he, of course, made Deep Blue Sea back in 1999, which I think is a really fun movie, right? Not high art, but as a shark B movie, it's probably my favorite shark movie after the original Jaws. Jaws is obviously number 1, there's no question there, but Deep Blue Sea is probably my favorite shark movie after Jaws, which, admittedly, competition's not exactly that stiff, but hey, worth mentioning. But Renny Harlin's going to do another shark movie. He's going to do a movie called Deep Water, which is coming out on May 1st, 2026, from Magenta Light Studios. John Kim and Pete Bridges wrote the Shark Attack thriller. That's what they're calling it. Oh, sorry, Shark Attack action thriller is actually what they're calling it. I just laughed there for a second because it says John Kim also wrote a movie called Bait, which I think is that also a shark movie? Because bait's like a fishing thing. Anyway, Dark Water follows, and sorry, not Dark Water. Dark Water is the Japanese horror movie from the same director as Ringu, which is pretty good. Anyway, Deep Water follows an eccentric group of international passengers whose plane en route from LA to Shanghai is forced to make an emergency landing in shark-infested waters. The terrified group is forced to work together and overcome their differences if they hope to escape their sinking plane and the frenzy of sharks drawn to the wreckage. Aaron Eckhart and Ben Kingsley are starring in this. which is interesting because Ben Kingsley, whilst an esteemed actor in a lot of ways, is also in a lot of garbage. So that could very much be what this is. And Aaron Eckhart's kind of an interesting one because he disappeared from like real movies for a long time and only is in really, really crappy direct to streaming stuff. And there's been some speculation as to why he might have been like blacklisted from Hollywood for a while or something. All that is to say that they could still both be under those kind of like current trends that they're in, and that this is actually just kind of a turd that's getting, farted out. Like hoping for something that's as good as Deep Blue Sea from Renny Harlin feels like a bit of a lost cause at this point because Strangers Chapter 1 was terrible, and the newest thing I saw from him before that was probably that dreadful Exorcist prequel. So, I mean, I can't say I'm excited. I'd love a good new shark movie. It's not like it has to be, again, it doesn't have to be deep, pardon the pun, but it just has to be a fun, adventure-y movie with some thrills. That's all it needs to be, right? Just give me some archetype characters, have some fun with it. But I feel like I don't trust them to pull it off. But hey, Renny Harlin, he's unlike a shark, he's swimming backwards. Sorry, that was a bad joke. Next up, Guillermo del Toro and Chuck Hogan's novella series, The Boy in the Iron Box, is getting a film adaptation at Netflix. With Del Toro and Hogan on board to produce. But Del Toro's not making it, though. So we have Rupert Friend, who was in Jurassic World Rebirth, Kevin Durand, who was in Abigail, but he's been in a bunch of stuff. He was in the recent Naked Gun movie as well. And then Jaden Martell, who was in It, will star in The Boy in the Iron Box, which brings the 6-part novella series to life. David Pryor, who directed The Empty Man, will write the script and direct the movie. Now, The Empty Man got some buzz when it came out. I actually didn't like that movie. I thought that movie was pretty bad. Like, I thought it was very overrated. That said, though, this is based on a book series, so, there's a lot more framework there to work from. Hollywood Reporter gives the details for this one. Published by Amazon Original Stories for its Kindle platform last year, the story told of a group of mercenaries that crash land on a remote snow summit. Taking refuge from the wolves in a long-abandoned fortress, the men find a concealed pit with a box wrapped in chains. Terrors are soon unleashed. And presumably, there is a boy in that iron box, just going by the title. So, I mean, it sounds like a pretty typical kind of horror story. Group of characters, isolated location, unleash something terrible. So, that's cool. Next up, we have a movie called Night Patrol, which is described as a vampire cop thriller from director Ryan Prose, or maybe it's Prose. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. But it was a teaser poster, came out this week along with a release date. It's going wide on January 16th, 2026. Now, having a January release date is a bit of a warning sign, admittedly, but, you never know. You never know. Sometimes you get a surprise. So it debuted at Fantastic Fest. Night Patrol is going to be on Fest soon, and it's going to theaters in January. In the film, an LAPD officer must put aside his differences with the area's street gangs when he discovers a local police task force is harboring a horrific secret that endangers the residents of the housing projects he grew up in. It mentions a bunch more cast members here, like Justin Long and RJ Cyler. A lot of names. CM Punk's in this as well, apparently. So yeah, Vampire Cop Squad, it sounds like, based on that. I love how it said Vampire Cop Thriller, but then the actual synopsis didn't mention vampires. It just kind of alluded to something dangerous, and that's about it. Yeah, I don't know. The director did at least one of the segments in VHS 94. That's what they've got listed here for him, so I haven't seen that one. So I can't comment to the potential quality, but it doesn't sound like a bad idea. I'm just side-eyeing that January release date for a horror movie because it usually spells disaster, but you never know. In fact, speaking of, the Silent Hill sequel that's coming out is coming out in January as well, I think, so rough times ahead. Next up, Academy Award-winning producer Graham King, who worked on The Departed, is teaming with Josh Miller and Pat Casey, the writers behind the Sonic the Hedgehog and Violent Night franchises, to develop Dead Drunk, a horror comedy based on a pitch from the duo. Here's the description. In the film, a newly divorced empty nester is coerced into taking a wine tasting tour. That makes more sense. By her. I mean, I guess you are testing it technically. It's just not accurate. So anyway, she's taken by her free-spirited best friends. Subsequently, the two women find themselves trapped at the vineyard with a terrifying secret. As they struggle to survive, they discover an ironic twist that could be their key to making it through the night. Their only hope? Staying drunk to stay alive. They'll worry about the hangovers if they live to see the dawn. So, definitely a horror comedy. The title's also kind of screaming that as well. So that's the gimmick. They have to stay drunk or they'll die, which I'm curious what the threat is exactly in that scenario. But I enjoyed Violent Night well enough for what it was. I don't think it was like a great movie, but I had a decent time watching it. If it's got a similar tone to that, I can see this being very watchable, but also probably fairly forgettable, I would guess. But who knows? Who knows? Josh Lucas from Ford v Ferrari, Alyssa Milano from Charmed, and David Arquette from the Scream movies have all wrapped filming on a movie called The Night Driver, which was filmed in New Mexico. There's some more cast listed here as well, but this is Jeremy Weiss making his directorial debut, and the script is from John Cork. The source material was published as a graphic novel of the same name. Now, is it a graphic novel or is it actually a comic book series? Because something about Hollywood doesn't like calling them comic books for some reason, even when they are. But here's the description. The film follows Hurdis Jones, played by Josh Lucas, a traveling pharmaceutical salesman who is desperate to return home with his wife Cheryl and family. His wife's Alyssa Milano. After surviving a run-in with a psychotic killer, only to be stalked relentlessly by him across the country and framed for several murders along the way. The police are on a nationwide manhunt for Hurdis, and it's up to Detective Granger, David Arquette, to prove Hurdis' innocence. I like the cross-country kind of, like even the title Night Driver. I like the idea. It's making me think, it's not the exact same plot, but it's making me think a little bit of an Australian movie called called Road Games, starring Stacey Keach and Jamie Lee Curtis. It's a really cool little thriller from the 80s, which annoyingly keeps going like out of rights for like certain countries, so it's hard to like get a hold of. I own it on Apple, but it's been delisted since I bought it. But it's a really fun little thriller. I'd describe it as Rear Window, but on the road. It's a truck driver who starts to see things that he thinks might match up with a serial killer that he's been hearing about on the news, and starts to investigate a little bit as he's driving and gets into some near misses, that kind of thing. This sounds like it's kind of going to have maybe a similar kind of vibe in some places where you're traveling cross country, nighttime, has to worry about the killer, but then has to worry about the fact that he's been framed. I see potentially. Now, I don't know this director. I don't know if the quality is going to be remotely there to back up any of this. But I think I like the premise for the most part. Next up, we've got a little bit of casting for the Resident Evil movie, so we're back to Zach Kreger, and that is Paul Walter Hauser is being cast in the Resident Evil film, which is coming out next year. So you might have seen him recently in The Naked Gun. He was like the, Frank's partner, right? He was the Ed of the movie, if you will. So yeah, just a quick update. Nothing much to add there, but just worth mentioning because I care about that movie being good, so be good. Next up, we're talking about a movie called October. I'll say that up front just in case it sounds confusing when I'm talking about October. You might think I'm talking about a release date or something. But young Mazzino from Beef and Stephen Root, who's been in a bunch of stuff. Here it says Barry, but I've seen him in tons of things over the years. They have signed on for supporting roles in October. Writer-director Jeremy Saulnier's new film for A24. They've also added Stanley Simons to the ensemble. So there's no words for the plot or the casting or anything like that. It's being described as a fugitive thriller set during Halloween, which is cool, right? That's a cool setting for something like that. It's maybe not quite a horror movie, but it's using the spooky vibes of the season to add to the suspense, which is neat. Jeremy Saulnier did Blue Ruin and I believe Green Room. So he's made some pretty solid thrillers already. So he's kind of one of those directors that I kind of notice. Like I've not like quite completely fallen in love with his work yet, but I've definitely taken notice of his work, and I've definitely been impressed with like how he's handled material. So consider my interest peaked in this one. So that's October, which they'll be shooting soon, I presume. Next up, Universal Pictures has pushed back the release of their film Other Mummy, which is a horror movie from Atomic Monster. So Other Mummy was meant to be coming out in May 2026, but it's now going to come out on October 9th, 2026. which will put it against The Legend of Aang, The Last Airbender. Hey, given how some anime has been doing recently, maybe that's a bad move, but I mean, maybe it's just not ready for me. I wonder, though, if they just maybe noticed they had an open slot that they'd claimed for October, and they said maybe we should move the horror movie that we've got ready to October instead of releasing it in May. Maybe it'll do better there because it's Halloween season. It's not a stupid logic. I get it. If that's the reason, if assuming it's not because there's something wrong that they have to fix or they need more time, which isn't necessarily a death knell in and of itself, but assuming it's just a case of, oh hey, we've already claimed this date on the schedule, we might as well put the horror movie there, since something else maybe fell away or got delayed itself or cancelled or whatever. So, it is what it is. Other Mummy is described as a supernatural trip into the darkening world of a young girl as her family and their home are haunted by a sinister entity that is determined to take up residence inside her. But first, it needs to persuade her to let it in. So, yeah, Jessica Chastain's in there. Jay Duplass, I assume they're playing the parents of the girl. And then the other mummy would presumably be the ghost or demon that's trying to nab the kid as a host. I don't really feel anything particularly strong about that just because the plot sounds so generic for a supernatural movie, but yeah, it is what it is. Next up, Paramount Pictures have acquired Here Be Monsters, a C-set survival thriller franchise, or that has franchise potential, I guess is what it's actually saying here. They're hoping this will become a franchise, which maybe is a little, counting your chickens a little before the eggs hatch, but it's going to be directed by Joachim Roning. I'm probably butchering the pronunciation of that, but it's the director of the new Tron movie, Tron Ares, that's just about to come out. That's who we're talking about here. He's going to direct this. It was a competitive auction apparently, but Here Be Monsters has been acquired by Paramount. It's the first thing the studio has acquired since Skydance took over. They asked to keep the plot and the content under wraps, so they're keeping that all secretive, but they're calling it an intense survival thriller at sea, reminiscent of films like Alien and The Thing. Scott Free is also involved in producing as well, so that means Ridley Scott and his cronies are got their names attached to it. I mean, them saying they want this to be a franchise before the first movie's out is always going to make me roll my eyes a little bit. Saying that you're trying to be a modern movie that's harkening back to Alien and The Thing, obviously those are movies that I think are amazing, and I would love a new suspenseful creature monster movie. It's set on a boat, it's nice and isolated, it seems like a good place for it. It's not that different from a ship in space, a ship in the sea, they're alone. I can see that working quite well. I don't know if I have strong opinions on the director. I'd have to check and see if I've seen any of his other movies. Obviously, I've not seen Tron Ares yet, but there's definitely potential. It's nothing like, obviously there's nothing strikingly original, and we don't know that much about it yet, other than they're comparing it to those movies, and it sounds like there's going to be like a sea monster. Obviously, I'm hoping for a Kraken, or something like that. I mean, admittedly, if they're comparing it to Alien and The Thing, maybe it's not something that's... It sounds more like something that'll be on the ship, which it wouldn't be a Kraken. I kind of want it to be a Kraken, though. We could use a big budget, like proper Kraken movie. It's kind of insane we don't have a modern Kraken movie yet. Give me the Kraken. Unleash it, they might say. they might say. I don't know who in the movie would say that. Maybe they'll be like a nut job who's like worshipping it, and he'll say unleash the Kraken at some point. See, I'm already getting my hopes up that it's a Kraken. It may not even be a Kraken. I'm cracking for the Kraken. This is a quick little story, but the two leads that were in The Long Walk, David Johnson and Cooper Hoffman, are actually reuniting on another movie for A24. It's called The Chaperones, and The Chaperones is set a few days after Christmas, where three slacker friends are hired to transport a troubled teen across the country. That sounds like an okay plot. I can't actually tell here if this is like a... Oh no, it says a thriller. Oh no, it doesn't. Sorry. It describes The Long Walk as a thriller. I was looking for like a genre somewhere in here, because the description could be like a comedy. It could be more of like an indie drama where they all grow as people. It could be a thriller even, if like someone badge chasing this person they're chaperoning. I would lean towards a comedy or a comedy drama, but like honestly, there's a lot of genres this could fill into. The description does not really give it away as to what the tone is going to be for this. I will say both those actors were very good, and I liked them both a lot in The Long Walk. So not a bad thing to have them teaming up again. The film's going to be directed by Sebastian Black in his feature debut. So obviously I have no opinion on little Sebastian. Next up, we got a trailer this week for Anaconda, starring Jack Black and Paul Rudd. This is a weird one. So it's kind of a reboot, I guess, in that there is a giant anaconda, but it's got nothing to do with the old movie in the sense that this is now a comedy. It's now a adventure comedy about some friends who are trying to make a snake movie, and then when the snake accidentally dies, they go looking for another snake in the jungle, and then they run into the giant anaconda, and hilarity ensues. But the trailer is all comedy. It's all about the comedy. This is not a horror movie or a thriller even. They do say in the trailer that they want to remake Anaconda, so it's kind of meta as well. Yeah, it's a bunch of middle-aged guys and having a midlife crisis, although I'm pretty sure Paul Rudd and Jack Black are both into their 50s now. I mean, you could say it's the late end of middle age, but you're definitely kind of pushing it onto the other side of middle age at that point. I don't know how I feel about it, honestly. I think it looks very generic modern Hollywood comedy to me. You know, it feels like a bunch of MCU style jokes just turned up to 11 because that's all that's there, as opposed to having like the serious part of the plot. So Thandie Newton's also in there as well. You know, it seems like something that'll be easy to watch and just throw on. I can't say I'm that excited about checking it out though, if I'm honest. So that's that. And then the last thing I'm going to bring up today is just a silly story because it's stupid. And that is that Sylvester Stallone apparently tried to pitch the idea that they could use AI to de-age him so he could play the 18-year-old version of Rambo in a prequel. All I really have to say to that is go home, old man. Enjoy some retirement and stop saying stupid things. No one wants that. It's ugly as shit. You know, no AI faces look good as of yet. They all look ugly as shit, right? Maybe they look okay before they start moving, but then everything just goes to shit. This feels like a weird way of like saying, hey, I can still play the role. I can do the prequel myself, even though I'm 81 or whatever age he is. Yeah, apparently he wasn't aware or is involved with the actual prequel that's happening with a new actor in that. He's not involved in that. But apparently he was clinging to his success and wanting to still be involved just recently whenever he suggested this. So I just thought this was a silly thing to throw out there and mention at the end, because it's just one of the more eye-rolling things I read this week as far as movie-related articles and topics go. So that's that, and then we'll just wrap up by looking at the box office from the last weekend. Demon Slayer once again took the top spot, 17 million, which was a good 75% drop from the first weekend. It kind of just shows that there's not a lot of competition right now. The biggest new entry was number 2, was the movie Him, with 13 million, which is reviewing terribly as well, might we add. I think this year has proven that the horror audience, both casual and hardcore, if there's good buzz about your horror movie, they'll show up for it. But if it's meant to suck, they probably won't. I mean, sometimes they might anyway, but but they didn't for this, seemingly. No, I've not seen it yet. I'm not casting an opinion myself. Maybe I'll think it's an unsung gem when I finally do. But people are not saying good things. Number 3 is Conjuring Last Rites with 12 million, and then 4 is Downton Abbey, the grand finale. And then The Long Walk's number 5 with 6 million, which is its second weekend. It's all a bit shameful for that, because that's actually a pretty good movie. It's a shame that it's not making a bit more. Number 6 is A Big Bold Beautiful Journey with 3.2 million. 7 is The Senior with 2.6 million. 8 is Toy Story's re-release with 1.4 million. 9 is Sight and Sound presents Noah Live with 1.3 million. And then number 10 is Weapons with 1.2 million. So yeah, Conjuring, Weapons still raking in money as well. A little bit there. So yeah, big thing coming out this weekend, I guess, is The Strangers Chapter 2, funnily enough, to go back to Renny Harlin. We'll see how that does. I don't think the last one made particularly much, and everyone who saw it, I'm pretty sure, hated it. So maybe there's a morbid curiosity by some people, but that's what's coming out this weekend, domestically at the very least. So there you go. That's that's the news for the week. Hopefully some of those stories were a little bit interesting. Let me know what you thought of any of them. If there's anything that you think I missed from this past week since last Wednesday, by all means, do let me know. I record this on Tuesday night, so obviously if something happens early on Wednesday, it won't be here. It'll be on next week's. But let me know if there's anything that I've missed that you think's worth mentioning in the comments. Of course, you can like, subscribe, helps out a bunch if you do. And of course, you can support this show, all the movie review podcasts, and everything that we do at MailFuzz, Movies and TV, over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV or via YouTube membership, and get access to some bonus stuff like Extra Reels, which is a monthly show where we review some of the worst movies ever made. And let me tell you that Love on a Leash, the last episode, was one of the funniest bad movies that we have ever covered on that show. So, thank you for joining me. I always appreciate it. Keep watching movies. And if you didn't get it, it's always nice to have diplomatic immunity.